Hello and welcome. This is the Public Affairs Forum, sponsored by the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Austin, Texas. Welcome. We hold these public affairs here at the church to present information of interest and concern to members of our congregation and the community at large. And we've been conducting these since 1954. Today we're very honored to have with us the County Clerk of Travis County, Dyana Limon-Mercado. Dyana was elected County Clerk in 2022, replacing the longtime serving Dana Dubois, and she's done an admirable and terrific job in her short tenure in that office. She's responsible for a multitude of tasks, and today she's going to tell us about some of those and her concerns and what we can do as good citizens and how she can help us. Dyana?
Thank you. Thanks, everyone, for having me here today. I'm Dyana Limon-Mercado, Travis County Clerk. Proud to be elected Travis County Clerk and serve all of you all. Our office actually has 4 different locations and 10 different divisions. So elections is actually just 1/10 of my job. So our other divisions include our probate and mental health division. So we also clerk and assist the courts in processing wills and estates that are getting probated, as well as mental health issues on the non-criminal side of things. We also assist in the misdemeanor criminal courts as well, and then in the civil courts for things like eviction appeals, and other civil court matters at the county level, not at the district level. And then we also lead all of the recordings for things like property deeds and titles in Travis County, marriage licenses, DBAs, cattle brands is another one that people don't know about. People often give them as gifts, not that we have a lot of people registering cattle brands in Travis County, but they do them for gifts often. And then we also have a records management division as well that holds some of the oldest records of Travis County, even before Texas was a state. We hold and retain and preserve those records as well. And then we have all of our back of the house, admin, finance, IT, external affairs, community engagement. And community engagement is actually a new addition to the office. Dana Dubois was memorable and had been here for almost 40 years and was incredible in her own right. And I'm really lucky that we were able to bring on Lily on our team today and a couple more staff who are actually charged with helping us to get out information to the community about what is happening in the clerk's office, how the clerk's office can be of assistance, and of course, how to get out the vote and how to participate in the election. So we're supposed to, talk a debrief about the election, and I kind of don't ever know what that means at this state when people haven't fully emotionally processed the outcome of the election and what's next for our country. Where do we go from here? What's the path forward? What can we expect? And I am like you, I don't have the answers to all of those questions, but I'm wondering the same things for the future of my family and my children and my community. I have 2 little ones, 11 and 6 years old, who go to school here in Austin, and all I can do is just continue to be involved, put one foot in front of the other, and figure out little ways that I can help my corner of the world. So I'm sure you all know I talked to one voter already. We have a runoff happening right now, and so it's very important that people get out to vote. We will have the election early voting happening through Tuesday, and election day will be Saturday, December 14th. So you still have plenty of time to vote. And at this time today, we have had less than 2% of people participate in the turnout. So it's very important. If you are in AISD, it's an at-large seat. Anybody can vote in that one. And if you are in Austin City Council, District 7, you can vote for your city council member in there as well. And the city of Manor also has a runoff for their mayoral election. And I know that the national climate has so many question marks about what's going to happen in the future and what that means for our local communities. But truthfully, the local elections have the greatest impact, the most immediate impact on our day-to-day lives and on our neighbors. And so getting out in this election is going to be the best way to help us shape our pathway forward. I love it. We love to hear. I told one of our good voters, I myself have not voted yet. But I have a plan to vote, and I'll be voting probably on Monday or Tuesday of early voting. But we are off and running on the runoff. But as far as the general election goes, we have some data to share with you all about turnout. We had about 63% of voters, registered voters, turn out in this election. I know we would all like to see that higher, But that is actually a really good turnout number relative to other counties in the general electorate at large. So Travis County, although we haven't met our own high expectations of, I know we want to see 100% or even 90 or 80% turnout, we still are in the top quartile of turnout for counties across Texas and across the country. So we do have very engaged voters here. We would love to see more, but the greatest tools that we have in that are you all. Talking to your neighbor, your friends, and family as a trusted source of information is proven to be the most persuasive information. People don't know what to trust on the internet. They don't know what to trust on social media. People are getting, the climate feels more divisive. People are getting set in their, determination earlier in the electoral process. We used to have, in the olden days, y'all remember, like persuasion happened in like the summer and the early fall, and then we would move into GOTV if you were working on a campaign, and now it's just all GOTV. People have made up their minds 6, 7, 8 months before the election has already happened. They've dug their heels in, and really the best way to combat that is with people you know and trust and can speak to them about their own experiences and your own experience to help encourage them about how they can make a difference, how their vote matters, and really what the outcome of the election holds. Some other important information that we have is around some of the turnout, and I will share these two graphs with you all, and we can send them also by email so you have them for a website or anything else you want. This is raw data that we have for turnout. You can see Democrat, Republican, and then other candidates, independents, libertarians, Greens, everything else falls in here. And then we also have percent turnout as well. Some of the key data between 2020 and 2024, which is what people often want to compare to, is that in 2024, 398,000 Democrats turned out compared to 2020 was 435,000 Democrats. 2020 was an outlier year, y'all. We were going through COVID. It's not an apples to apples comparison. Really, the state of the world and our country specifically was in a very different mental and emotional place. It's not a fair comparison. It's sort of like comparing Obama 2008 to every other candidate that came before them. Like, it was a high water mark. Something different was happening in the American public, and we can't really use that as a pinpoint. If you take that one out, you can see the numbers have trended upwards for Democrats. And in Travis County, in raw numbers and percentages for the most part, and Republicans have roughly stayed around the same. So that is what turnout has looked like in Travis County. Like I said, overall, we have very high participation relative to our other counties that are similarly situated to us. And we have seen also upward trends in a lot of younger voters getting out and participating in voting. So typically, when we look at the data, roughly they have like a 55 and older group and an under 55 group. The 55 and older group is like 2/3 of the vote, and then the under 55 is kind of split under 35, 35 to 55, and they each kind of have like, a sixth of the vote, and it's mostly people over 55 and older. In the last couple of elections, it's really been like a third, a third, a third. So a third of about voters under 35, a third of voters in that 35 to 55 range, and about a third of voters over 55 or 65. So in Travis County, we have seen a lot of growth in younger voters turning out more consistently, which is our goal and a big part of our community outreach work. Research also shows that the closer somebody is to the age 18 when they first cast a ballot, the more likely they are to become a lifelong voter. So that's what we do. If you only talk to one or two people, please make it the people that are 16, 17, and 18 so that we can get them to vote in this runoff would be a great place to start if they haven't voted yet. And then the May election. If you can get a person to vote in a municipal election, one of the very small elections, a runoff, I consider them the gateway drugs to democracy. They're definitely going to vote in the gubernatorial election and the presidential election in the future. So getting our young folks out to vote is critically important, making sure that they feel confident in that process. That's the most common feedback we get from either people who haven't voted or who are voting for the first time, is that they didn't know how to vote and they felt nervous about going in. They didn't know what to expect. They weren't sure they were going to have the right ID. And it's just kind of like going into any room where you don't know anybody. You're like, what's it going to be like when I get there? What's the dress code? Am I dressed right? Do I look like I know what I'm talking about? Am I like going to get up there and be embarrassed? And we always reassure them. We have excellent election workers who are there to welcome and make every voter feel comfortable and confident in the process and give them the information they need. But with young voters, I really find that like taking them along with you or as part of a friend group or a family group or a neighbor group so that you are there to reassure them of their confidence in the process when they get there is really helpful to make sure that they actually get there, get in the door, and if they run into any issues, suspended voter, or they need to update their address or any other issues like that, that they feel comfortable continuing through the process. But yeah, we've seen really great turnout in youth voting in Travis County. Our office has put a big emphasis on getting more young people to vote in this election. So in the last couple of elections, we've added poll sites to St. Edwards for Election Day. We've added a poll site to Houston-Tillotson for Election Day as well. And UT has 4 early voting sites within walking distance of campus. And I think they have, depending on the election, 3 to 5 Election Day places as well. We also partner closely with ACC as well. And so I think of the 8 campuses they have in the Travis County area, almost all of those have an early voting site within walking distance of the campus. It is. It's been great to work with the universities and the schools themselves to help promote those efforts. So ACC hosted a couple of parades to the polls this election at 5 of their campuses, I think, to help get students out. They had music, they had some activities, and then they all went to the nearest poll place together. St. Edwards also provided shuttles to their students during early voting periods, since they don't have an early voting poll place on campus, but they have one at the South Austin Rec Center, so they provided shuttles over there. And then the University Democrats fundraised to provide their own shuttles as a private organization to get students to some of the other poll places that had shorter lines than the UT Union. So we've just seen great efforts from the youth vote as well. We also partnered with AISD, and some of our elementary schools designed their own stickers. This one is a picture of an iguana, maybe? Some type of lizard, and it was designed by the Bailey Elementary School arts class as well. And so they nominated, they picked this student, and then we were actually able to get these printed and used at the poll site at Bailey Elementary. So the voters there were actually getting stickers from the students themselves. And it's just another touch point to get young folks to start thinking about the elections and to see themselves really reflected in the process itself. Our office is working on more outreach efforts around younger voters with mock elections and student field trips, and we're trying to kind of figure out more fun ways to get young folks involved in the electoral process earlier so that, again, they can become lifelong regular voters, and by the time you and I are done getting out the vote, that Travis County will continue to be seeing increased turnout. Some of the other really kind of frequent questions that come up are issues around security concerns with elections. Amazing, now that the election is over, all the concerns around voter fraud have dried up. There were none. So interesting. It's really interesting to me because our office runs the election the same irregardless of the outcome, right? We don't know the outcome until y'all know the outcome essentially at the same time. I know some people don't believe that, but you all, as kind of an informed group, know that none of the systems that are scanning your ballots and printing your ballots are connected to the internet. So until all of those ballots actually come back to the office in hard form and are scanned and tabulated in, we don't know the results. And when those results come out on election night, we get them about 3 minutes before you all get them on the website. But we run the election the same every single time. We are diligent about security at every level. In this election, we worked closely with the Department of Homeland, the FBI, the United States Postal Service was kind of a fun partner to work with, and were really interesting. We, of course, work with local police departments for each of the smaller cities as well as Austin, and then the Travis County Sheriff's Office is our closest partner, as well as our constables for all of the precincts. So they handle a lot of the physical security pieces, making sure that chain of custody on ballots is documented and all the ballots are where they're supposed to be in the custody of the person they're supposed to be and sealed and secured throughout the process. And then we additionally work with partners on cybersecurity as well to monitor threats in real time, make assessments, and just harden our systems continually. Luckily, Travis County did not have any system-wide outages or impact on the cyber front or on the physical front, either one. So that was our goal, was to have an uneventful election in terms of physical or cybersecurity threats, and I think Travis County did a really outstanding job on that. We had been preparing for this election, honestly, for a year in terms of cybersecurity meetings, physical security meetings. Our election workers in this last election participated in de-escalation training so that if they were confronted with any issues on site and any disgruntled folks in the poll place, that they had some tools for how to de-escalate those situations. Each of our election poll places is also supplied with a Travis County phone that connects directly to our call center at our headquarters, and we have law enforcement in our call center during the election. So if an election judge calls and says, hey, I've got a person here, it seems kind of suspicious, they keep coming in and out, I've asked them, nicely what their business is here, if they're done voting, that they need to leave, they keep coming back, they seem like they're getting anxious, we can have law enforcement on the phone with them right then to help assess the situation and then deploy additional support if needed. But thankfully, we didn't have any of those issues to report. Occasionally, when we do have those issues, it is most frequently candidates. And most frequently candidates in the western part of Travis County. My gosh, every time Lakeway has an election, we got something happening at the Lakeway Activity Center. So we work very closely with the Lakeway Police Department. They're aware of their frequent flyers in the process. But, it is true. All politics are local, and the more local, the more intense that they seem to get. So the local candidates seem to be the ones where occasionally they get a little too aggressive or handsy in their electioneering with other voters or with other candidates that have a presence at the poll site, and then disagreeing over things like sign placement and who's allowed to do what. And we have legal counsel. Obviously, our county attorney, Delia Garza, and her staff support us and are very hands-on and often embedded in our office to help evaluate situations. And we regularly talk to the Secretary of State as well on that front. But yeah, that's typically the most frequent issue we have is with candidates and campaign staff just being a little too aggressive either with each other or with voters in the electioneering process. And we try to give them the rules and, allow everybody to, have their say and be a part of the process, but they do have to be respectful of the law and obviously not discourage people from participating in the process. I'm trying to think if we had any other issues. We had a couple of other just singular issues. We had an issue, I think it was opening morning of election. When you turn on the equipment, you as a voter have seen there's a tablet that opens and we have your voter registration information. There's a printer it connects to that will print your ballot style number on it. And then there is another printer. If you have a special circumstance that requires some sort of affidavit or address change or name update or something like that, there's another printer that prints out that information. So you can verify everything and we connect it all back together and it can go back to the big office and get entered correctly. On opening morning, somebody turned the equipment on in the wrong order, so then the printer wasn't working, so then the poll books weren't on, so then people couldn't intake voters, and I don't know who called, but somebody posted on social media or called the media and said there was a cyber security threat attack at the poll place. There was no attack. Somebody just turned the printer on in the wrong order. So they just turned the printer off, turned it back on. It worked. So I think that's kind of its own threat is people jump to conclusions pretty fast these days. And I understand there's a lot of concern around our elections and it can make people very anxious. But I think that is critically important part of being a good voter is not spreading misinformation. We had some other concerns coming out from the university students when we had to move poll places from, it's typically been at Flan Activity Center, it's now in the student union, and some of the student groups started crying wolf, that they weren't going to have enough machines and all these other problems. And lo and behold, by the time we finished our surveying process, they ended up with more machines and equipment than they would have had previously. So that was kind of, I think, the biggest issue we had was misinformation coming from within progressive voters themselves and do-gooders and people who were just concerned in many cases and just kind of jumping to the worst case conclusion, which often was not the situation that we were dealing with. So I think as good voters, it's just important. Don't spread misinformation, right? Give grace, give people the benefit of the doubt, follow up, verify your sources. A lot of people yell things on social media. We do our best to respond, but it is faster if you just call us. So calling our main line into our call center, they log every call that we get. Our call center took over 41,000 calls during the election. And that's real people. That's not, an AI system in there. We have real call takers who are good voters like yourself from Travis County. They are all registered Travis County voters. They have the same requirements as our election workers do. Many of them have worked with us for 20 or 30 years. They have worked with us through all different types of elections, all different systems that we've had in that period of time running our elections, and they are just like our best resource and toolbox to making sure that voters and election workers have a great experience. They are our superpower, I think. They're my favorite people to see. When you go in our office, there's a little call center kind of in a little hub of its own, and it's just humming with activity. Every phone's ringing. It's a very enthusiastic person trying to help a very concerned person on the other end make sure every ballot gets cast, all the equipment is running, and that everybody's safe at the poll place. But they light up my heart every day that I get to be with them, because they are, they're paid, but truthfully, it's a servant's calling to continue to show up to do the call center and take all of those calls. Most of the calls that they receive are around ballot by mail, and that's most of the questions we get into the call center. Texas at the state level has made it very confusing to participate in ballot by mail. We do our best to try to demystify the process, but it is many forms and many different boxes to check and fill out just so. So if there are any questions or concerns, always call our call center. They can walk any voter through the correct steps, check on their ballot, their application, and make sure we received it, and that it's been counted properly. I think some of the things that are tricky on ballot by mail are, of course, the two numbers when you apply. So Texas added a new law several years ago that requires you on your ballot by mail application, which already has to be done annually, which is its own burden because you have to do it every year, that you include either your driver's license number or the last 4 digits of your social security number, whichever one you used on your original voter registration. But if you're like me, I registered over 20 years ago. I don't remember what number I registered with. So we instruct people to just include both numbers. That way there's not an issue with finding which number they originally registered with. But that is the number one reason we have of our rejections for application for ballot by mail is they didn't include both numbers. So now we have to reject it, return it to them, give them the opportunity to cure if they're still within the time frame to do that, and then get it corrected. After that issue, we have people who maybe don't get their ballot back to us in a timely manner. And so in this last election, I know we had a gentleman, he got his ballot later in the process because we actually can accept applications. You have to apply by October 25th, but you can apply by email. I'm like putting email in air quotes because even if you email us the application, you still have to mail the hard copy, and that's very confusing for people. They're like, why did I email if I have to also mail? But if you email by the 25th, in this last election was the date, you had up until the 30th to mail us the hard copy. So October 30th is pretty close to November 5th. So that's not a lot of time for us to get in the hard copy, go back to the email, check that you emailed on time, verify that those go together, then send it on to our ballot team to stuff and pack your envelope, get you the right ballot, get it to the post office, mail it back to you, you get it, and then you have to mail it back to us, postmarked by November 5th, but then you have up until the 6th for it to actually be received in our office. In one case, this gentleman was concerned about that timeline. He was right, like at the last day. He went to UPS, I think, and paid $82 to overnight it to us, and it did not get to us until the 7th. And so we could not accept it, and he was very frustrated. He was like, it's y'all's fault. And I was like, we understand how it feels that way because ultimately you're trying to cast your ballot with us, but there's a middleman in here, and there's a couple different ones. We've got USPS, we've got UPS, we got FedEx, we got some other ones. And so, we can't guarantee those systems as well. And so that's very frustrating for voters. And I really felt for him, not only for the $82 lost, which he was very frustrated by, but also, not being able to know that your ballot was counted after you went through all of those hoops and hurdles to try and participate in the process. The other bit of confusion we have around ballot by mail is hand delivery of ballots. People, sometimes they're requesting ballot by mail because they're planning to be out of the state or the country or whatever, because they're on an extended trip or something, or maybe they're caring for a loved one that's going to be in a different location. And so they requested their ballot by mail on time, but now they want to hand deliver it to us to make sure that it gets to us. In Texas, you can only hand deliver a ballot by mail on Election Day. I know. It's not great. And in Texas, each county can only have one drop box per county. So in Travis County, that is at 5501 Airport, the old tax office that most of you all know as our headquarters. But in a county like Harris County, they also only get one box. They have 4 million people. That county takes 2 hours to get across. And so it is a huge burden and barrier on folks. Often people who are voting by mail cannot drive, so they have to get a person to drive them to then hand deliver their ballot, because Texas also only allows you to hand deliver for yourself. You cannot hand deliver for somebody else. So it is just one barrier after another on ballot by mail. Like I said, the people who get through these sort of certain special circumstances to actually cast their vote, I'm just like, you are a champion of democracy that you made it this far, despite some of our state leaders not wanting you to be able to vote, but they got through it. We also had similar challenges around limited ballot in a presidential election. Limited ballot allows people who, basically, they're kind of in no man's land. They say they used to live in Caldwell County. They just moved to Austin. They're registered in Caldwell, but they moved to Austin after the voter registration deadline. So now they are technically a registered Texas voter. They're eligible in Texas. They've been registered. They could vote in Caldwell County, except they don't live there anymore. Now they live in Travis County, but they moved here after the 30-day deadline to register. So now what do they get to do? They do get to vote limited ballot. It is not easy. There is only one place in the whole county that they can vote limited ballot at. It is also at 5501 Airport, and it is a very manually intensive process. So y'all are used to, I'm sure, when you're going to the poll place, you check in, we ask for your ID, we scan it. It's pretty quick, pulls up your address. We say, is this your address? You go, yep. We know what exact ballot style that matches to, what races you get to vote on. You stick your ballot in the machine, it pulls everything up, and then you cast your ballot, you check everything, you put in the scanner, you're on your way. Hopefully, it takes less than 10 minutes to do that. On limited ballot, it is a very intensive process. They often are just moved in, so we don't have registration information to verify in a system, so it has to be manually verified by a person while they sit there. And sometimes we have to check on a map and zoom way in, see where the house dot is. You get all types of silly ones where somebody just moved into Travis County, but their backyard is still in Bastrop County, like the property's split between county lines. So we have to figure out where they get to vote at. And then when they get to vote, it is actually like a ballot by mail, like a paper application. So they hand mark their ballots, and then we have to take those in and count those in their own stream. But in a presidential election, that is typically when we get the most interest for people to want to vote and turn out, and it's also when the people with the most issues turn up to vote. They haven't voted in a long time. They don't know what the process is. They're just figuring out that they have to vote limited ballot. They can only do it at one place in the whole county, and it is a manual process and very long when they get there. At one point, the line for limited ballot was down the hall of our building, out of the building, down the sidewalk of the building, and down the next sidewalk. So when we finally got to the last limited ballot person on the last day, I think she was in line until 11 p.m. I just gave her the biggest hug. I was just so proud of her for sticking with it and making sure that her vote got cast. And truthfully, that's what this is all about, is just making sure that every person has the opportunity to participate. And I can't say enough about our election workers. They're just incredible and so dedicated. And we could not do this without them. It takes thousands of election workers to bring every election to life, no matter if, like in this election, 10 people show up, or in the presidential election, hundreds of thousands show up. the sites and staffing the sites is a fixed asset and takes thousands of people to run every single election. And no matter how many grumpy voters they deal with and how many state law changes they deal with and how many technical issues they deal with printers connecting and ink running out, they still show up every single election. And they just, make this the best job in Travis County to have. So we could not do it without them. Has anybody here been an election worker before? Thank you. Yes, appreciate y'all. We really cannot do it without y'all. In this election, we also had a partnership with AISD to recruit student election workers. So we were actually able to place over 100 high school students to work in this election. Yeah. And even better, many of them were able to help work curbside voting, which is really hard on some of our older election workers getting up, sitting down, getting back outside, bringing it in. It's hot, it's cold, pushing the equipment in and out, and all the back and forth that they have to do running. So having some additional young folks on site to be able to assist with that was a big help, and for them to really, again, help some of our most marginalized voters and make sure they can cast their ballot. So we were really proud of that, and it's something we hope to continue to grow and have more new folks and first-time voters and first-time workers kind of joining our ranks and really seeing the system from the inside out. In my experience so far in the 2 years, that has been the most persuasive tool that we've seen is when people have questions or concerns about the elections, just sign up to be an election worker and come see what it's like. And I've had an opportunity to meet some of our election workers at our election worker training. I try to go every election and meet some new folks and sit down and see what they're learning and how they're learning it. And, I have people come tell me, like, I was skeptical and I wasn't sure, and I had heard all these things about the elections that made me think y'all weren't doing a good job. So I signed up, and they're like, and now they're an elections evangelist. They're like, I get that y'all are doing a great job, and I see how much effort is put into protecting the entire process, and they feel really confident now in being a part of the system in Travis County. So that's what we hope for everybody, is that people feel like they have a system that they can believe in, they can trust, no matter what the outcome is, that they feel like their vote was counted, and that they can count on the Travis County Clerk's office to be a good partner and, the protector of democracy as we're supposed to be in that case. So I think that's kind of it for me, but I'd love to take some questions if folks have any. My good friend Jim, yes.
Microphone.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Is this on? Okay. One area that's of quite a great deal of interest and concern to us is in a state like Texas with 254 counties, unlike any other place. My friends in Oregon always ask me what's going on in Texas because it's much simpler there. A lot of the rural counties don't have the benefit of the experience and ideas that we here in Travis and perhaps some of the other larger counties have. Is there any program to assist these other counties to make their systems work as well as has been achieved here?
Yeah, thank you. We do get glowing remarks in Travis County, despite the state's repeated efforts to kind of put a political target on Travis County. The SOS, the Secretary of State, comes to our office all the time, frequently. They're there, every day almost during the election happening and early voting and central count, and every single time we get glowing remarks. Yeah, so we really are a model in Travis County for so many other communities, and we often ask other communities, what are best practices? We asked the Secretary of State, and they're like, Travis County has all the best practices. So I can't take all the credit for that. A lot of that was due to Dana DeBeauvoir, and she just built a great foundation for us to build on, and that's what she told me when I came in. We've done a lot of good work, but there's still a lot more good work to be done. With other counties, we partner with them in a couple of different forums. The Secretary of State brings different counties together, both for statewide conferences and for some regional trainings, and so we share ideas and they facilitate idea and knowledge sharing that way. We also obviously are in regular contact with our partners in Hays County and Bastrop County and Williamson County to talk about what they're doing. That came up most recently in the mayoral race for the city of Austin when there was a question if was there going to be a recount or not, and the city of Austin crosses county lines, so we needed to partner with our friends in Hays County and Williamson County to make sure that we were all on the same page about how to best operate a recount if needed so that voters could be confident in the results of the recount. We did not end up having a recount after all, but that's just, one example of how we do partner if and when needed. We also partner on systems. There's only 2 systems in Texas, for the most part, that counties can use. So election systems have to be vetted by the state and the federal government. So I hope this brings people some sort of like political comfort that like at the state level, the Republican leadership has signed off on these systems. And at the federal level, the Democratic leadership also signed off on the same systems. So we agree on something, which is that these systems are trustworthy. The 2 systems are HART, InterCivic, and the other system is ES&S. Travis County is an ES&S system. Williamson County is also an ES&S system. I think Harris County is a HART system. I think Dallas is ES&S. So we also partner like that. Sometimes we run into just technical or logistical issues with state timelines, and the state says we have to do this on this timeline, but we haven't done this in the process yet, so how do we do that if we haven't done this? And we regularly talk to our other county counterparts to see how they're operating that. And then there's also another forum called the Election Center, which is actually the national level that certifies election officials and also brings election officials and staff together from all over the country to talk and share ideas. They just had a conference on their professional papers of 2024, which is basically everybody brings forward their best ideas from the 2024 elections and shares them across states and across counties to see what people want to adopt. We relied on some of that research to think through some new security enhancements for elections going forward. I think we have a good system in Travis County right now, but the hard part is staying ahead of the bad guys. And I'm not a bad guy, so I don't know how to think like them all the time. It's hard to think like the opposition, but we have great staff and security experts and cybersecurity experts that are helping us think through how do we already get ready for 2026 and 2028 and really stay on the forefront of security so that people can continue to count on our system. So we do share a lot of knowledge across the elections community. It's a really tight-knit community. I'm also going to take a tangent here and encourage people to consider it as a career path. People don't think about elections as a career path, but we definitely need more elections professionals. So if you know another person coming into the professional workforce and they haven't considered elections, but they care about democracy, it's a great career path. I mean, some things about it. Number 1, elections are always going to be here. And number 2, every county in America has a system. So they can move anywhere in the country and probably have a job opportunity. Yeah, and the other part of that is, unfortunately, because of the political climate and the stress and pressure on elections officials in the last, 4 or 5 years, the turnover has increased dramatically. And so, unfortunately, the elections field, there was some research this last year out on this too, elections professionals are turning over at a rate of 40% every 4 years. Yeah, so every presidential election, we're using 50% of half of our knowledge base. And so getting people in, getting them knowledgeable, trained, helping them to see a career path is going to be really important to us for our long-term infrastructure, that we have enough people to continue to run it and enough people with historical knowledge to continue to run it. So I'm trying to push that to our up-and-coming young professionals. You don't need a degree to start working in elections. There are state certifications, national certifications. It's really just a hands-on, on the job training. And the first way to get in the door is to just become an election worker and go work at a poll place. And then from there, we start to recruit folks.
How do you become an election worker?
Sorry, we have a question.
How do you become an election worker?
Yeah, to become an election worker, you can contact our office at votetravis.gov. There's information on there. Interested in being a poll worker. We also have a student election worker page if you know any young folks that want to become an election worker. And then from there, you just indicate if you're a Republican, identify Republican or Democrat or neither. And then we work with your local party to help place election workers. Depending on the types of election, the party, the Republican and the Democratic Party, jointly appoint officials for each poll site. So we have to have a Democratic clerk, a Republican clerk, a Democratic judge, or a Republican alt judge. So everything's in a bipartisan team, or we try to get it that way. So we typically recruit people, we work through the parties to kind of supplement, and we have people that offboard all the time. They move, they're not up for the task anymore, whatever it is that. So we're recruiting people all the time. So on our website is the easiest way, and then same for student election workers. And for student election workers, they can start being an election worker at 16. So, and they get the day off of school, and they get paid, and the state allows them to have an excused absence for it. Yeah, so the student election workers also get to make $20 an hour, and they get to show up on election day, and they get an excused absence. So it's a lot of fun for them too.
And who pays for all these thousands of workers at
Who
$20
pays for
an hour?
all the workers? You all do. The great taxpayers of Travis County have invested in just an incredible top-notch system in Travis County. To Jim's previous question about smaller, more rural counties not having the same access to resources that we do, that's the greatest hindrance for the smaller counties is access to financial resources to fund the amount of people. And Travis County and our Commissioner Court have been incredible partners. Judge Andy Brown, Commissioner Trevelyan, all of our commissioners really have been incredible champions for elections, both since I've been serving and previously with Dana, to just every time we say we really need this to make sure that we can, meet the Travis County need, they have stepped up every single time and figured out a way to help us make it happen. Yeah.
And during this heated political climate, have there been any specific threats against you or your staff?
Oh, any specific threats against me and my staff? I think we talked about this a little bit earlier. My former job was with Planned Parenthood, Texas Votes, and so I ran the political arm of Planned Parenthood in Texas for over a year. Unfortunately, that set me up for to be, well-versed in a lot of different types of threats and security issues. So I think I'm the wrong person to ask sometimes about these things because I'm like, yep, I've been, getting threats and had security issues for a long time in my life, unfortunately. But we have great partners at the Sheriff's Office, and they are with us all the time helping to support our election workers, chain of custody. We didn't have any direct issues come up. So I believe in Bexar County there was an issue where a voter came in, I think with a MAGA hat on. The election worker asked them to remove that because of political attire restrictions, and then they were assaulted by the voter. That did not happen in Travis County, and I feel terrible that that would happen anywhere. But we did not experience that in Travis County. And again, kind of on the front end, we sent our staff earlier this year through de-escalation training and continuing to bring that back in future years. The political attire and cell phones in the poll place. Those ones are hard to confront some folks about in the poll place. So political attire, we didn't have too many issues with. Usually we just nicely sell out, you can't have that on, and you can turn it inside out, or you can take it out and change. I think sometimes we have like paper vests or temporary vests that they can put on over their stuff to conceal it. So we haven't had any of those issues. We did have one issue, kind of inadvertently, where a voter walked into the poll place with a keffiyeh on, which is a headscarf, cultural headscarf of Palestine, and the election worker asked them to remove the headscarf. That was not political attire. We followed up with the voter directly to extend our apology. From myself, I talked to the voter directly to extend our apology. We retrained our election worker that was involved in that situation, and then we'll be adding that to our trainings going forward, that like religious attire, cultural attire does not constitute as political, and just because somebody else wants to make it political doesn't mean we have to accept that premise, right? I think I'm in good company here. Like, human rights to me are not political, but the opposition often wants them to make it political, and I think it's up to us to depoliticize it and to not feed into that. So we did, like I said, extend an apology to the voter themselves, apologize for that, and then retrain our election worker, and then now have a new thing to add to our slide deck for training.
I think you indicated there were not any accusations of fraud here in Travis County, but are you aware of any accusations of fraud in other counties across the state?
I'm not familiar with any accusations across the state. Again, all politics is local, so it gets really heated locally between certain candidates, certain political parties, if they feel certain elected officials had their hands on too much of the process. Sometimes those are kind of the claims that we hear around. I try to avoid that, so just so you all know, like, I'm never in the company of live ballots by myself. There's always staff people and cameras on there. Fun fact, I don't even have access to our vaults. I mean, I think I technically do, but I've never gone in one. So it's just stuff like that, making sure that, you keep proper chain of custody and clear lines. It gets tougher in the small counties because they don't have that many staff to kind of manage chain of custody. So it may only be one elected official and two staff people that are touching everything. And if that one elected official is friends with another person who's running, then how does that make the other candidate feel, you know? But ultimately, the systems are all protected against kind of any, you know, debauchery. And there's audits and many different ways that we keep our records and available to the public so that everybody can feel confident no matter kind of where they are in the process. But I think that's kind of most of what I hear and see is people have feelings of questions around election integrity because they don't like the personalities involved, and less so about the actual systems.
Is it,
One question, microphone. Yeah. Oh. Okay. Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Expired driver's license, can they be used for election?
Yeah. So the question is about expired driver's licenses and if you can use them or not. You can use, any voter can use an expired license for up to 4 years past expiration. So there were some questions that came up, and I think it was maybe in the Statesman, a story around folks who couldn't get DPS appointments to renew their driver's license, concerned they wouldn't be able to vote. They can vote. They have 4 years to get a DPS appointment. I think they'll get one before then, if they're lucky. So anybody can use an expired license up to 4 years. And even if they don't have an expired license, because one of the questions that came up in that circumstance was like somebody who's newly 18, they have no ID. And they can't get an appointment for 6 more months. How are they going to vote? We have a list of Class A documents, which are going to be your driver's license, your passport, all the standard stuff. There's a whole other list of Class B documents, birth certificate, other government documents on it with your name and address that we can use to accept you into the poll place. And depending on other circumstances of your registration status, you could still vote normally. That doesn't mean you're necessarily going to vote provisional. Provisional ballot is sort of separate of the registration question. So there are definitely circumstances where you can vote with a Class B document, not a standard driver's license, and still vote normally. You don't have to vote provisionally. The follow-up to that is if you are 65 or older, I'm double checking, 65 or older, your license can be expired forever. So you don't have the 4-year limit if you are over 65. In my head, I'm like 65, 75, 65. Lily said it's 65. So again, the 4 years for anybody, but if you're over 65, you can vote with expired license forever. Yeah, great question. I love it. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all for having me. I appreciated being here.
Thank you very much. We want to thank Ms. Limon-Mercado for being with us today and for the great job she does as county clerk, and many successes in the future. And we hope we'll see you for many years doing the fine job you're doing. Thank you very much for being with us today.